You know what today is? Today is the day that you become a more impactful teacher of students with visual impairments without having to leave work. Let's break this down real quick because we will be going over a very simple 3-part framework that I use on a daily basis to feel more confident as a teacher, to help my learners achieve their goals, and not just the ones that I set because I knew that they could meet them, but the ones that will actually be drivers for their lives and allow them to increase their independence and do so in a way that allows me to also have a life outside of work. Because we all know that in order to continue to be a more impactful teacher and in order to continue to drive my students and their learner, I need to feel like a good, whole person and not be trying to pour from an empty cup all the time. Because we know from experience that burnout is massive within the teaching world. In fact, over 50% of teachers quit in the first 5 years. Now, wouldn't it be nice if we could keep all of those teachers? Wouldn't it be nice if we ourselves could feel less burnt out? If we could know exactly how to help our learners increase their skills and do so in a way that is up with the cutting edge technology. That's exactly what we're going into in this episode, in this video today. First and foremost, everything that I'm going to share is possible for all teachers of students with visual impairments and really anybody who works with students with visual impairments, no matter what your job title is and no matter who you are, how much expertise you have. You could also be a parent, you could be an admin. All of these skills will be applicable to you, and it doesn't matter how many years of experience you have, and it doesn't matter how big your caseload is. They will all be applicable and tangible enough for you to actually administer them tomorrow. So let's start off here. First and foremost, do you know how many people, how many teachers work over 60 hours per week? About 10% of teachers work 60 hours a week or more. Now, if you add that up, right, say you get paid $38 an hour, that is a lot of money. We're talking $27,000, I think $360. I don't have my notes with me right now, but I believe we're somewhere in the ballpark per school year that you're giving away. Now, I don't know about you, but I could use an extra 30 grand in my pocket because I'm not giving it away to my school district. So that way I can have time to do other things that matter to me, or to actually make that $38 an hour elsewhere if I really want the money to appear in that manner. What is happening a lot of times in schools is that we are using old techniques for learners that are going into a job market where the jobs have not been created yet. And we continue to tell ourselves that we do this because it's proven, because that's the way that things have always been done. But if you really think about it, the school system was not designed for your learner's success, especially if your learner has a visual impairment. It wasn't designed for them at all. And you can see that on a day-to-day basis. I just came from 3 schools where it's pretty obvious that school is not designed for our learners. But they're really not designed for any learners to succeed and become the boss. If you think about it, schools were really designed for the industrial age by who? Oh, that's right, by moguls for their corporations, so that they could indoctrinate children to become workers, factory workers. Now, it's past the turn of the century. We are fully in the 21st century at this point in time. And still, students have to raise their hand to go to the bathroom. So they end up ignoring their bodily needs, especially when the teacher tells them no. They can't get a drink of water when the teacher says that they're not allowed to. They go sit in a cafeteria that looks very much like the cafeterias in jails and in factories. They often are still in rows of desks. Now we have some more clusters, but they're still often in rows of desks with one teacher at the front, very much so emulating where they're being indoctrinated into. And in fact, the reason that we have 12 years of schooling is because studies were done back in the day that showed that it takes 12 years to indoctrinate children into the workplace. And now we've added on kindergarten as well to that and made that really academic and rigorous as well. So you can see that the strategies and the techniques that were developed in the school system way back when, it might have worked for what the economy needed and for where people needed to go way back when. They were training people to hold jobs and to be able to do their job really well and to be productive members of society. And that is great. We're not fighting against that. But what's happening now is that when we refuse to do things in a new way, we end up hindering our students. So if we look at the old way of education, we can see that education back then, it was teacher-led and teacher-centered. Now we have student-led and student-centered. Back then, we were giving ideas to our learners, and now we're starting to ask our learners to come up with the ideas for themselves. And back then, we would give them yes or no, right or wrong worksheets, and we trained them, and we still do, train them on how to take a test to be successful in the world outside of school. You had to master the skills of taking this test and getting answers right or wrong. And now we're shifting into giving them the problem with no rubric, with no right or wrong answer, and allowing them to problem solve. We are slowly shifting from where we were as an educational system to where we are going. And that is a great thing, because 21st century education allows us to increase the rigor that we have for our learners, and it allows us to increase the academics that we bring into our expanded core curricula classes. I want to show you a quick clip of Robin Clark. Last year at the TVI Symposium, she did a fantastic presentation all on rigor and bringing the expanded core curriculum and 21st century teaching techniques together, so that way we can begin to expand our learners' horizons and allow them to see what is possible beyond what they have now. Let's go ahead and watch that.
We have to give it directly, help them make meaning of it. And then a big part of the instructional process must be on how students are applying, refining, and generalizing these skills. That is a hallmark of what 21st century education is asking us to do now. Remember, a lot of the school and a lot of the educational strategies that we follow are from a century that we're not in. We are no longer in the industrial revolution or the industrial time where students needed to learn a skill by rote or memory to work on an assembly line. Now, I know many of you are like, yeah, duh. But look at how much of our education, our classrooms, still reflect what we were doing in 1970. We shouldn't have a classroom that looks like that anymore, because in our age, we are in the information age. I want to make sure that everybody really knows that. We are in the information age. Today, we are focusing on how students can apply learning, not just how they learned it, but what can they do with that. I also want to make sure that I am very clear to say that 21st century learning is not just for students who are typically developing. It is for all students. The role of educators in the 21st century should be helping every student learn how to learn. It's about inspiring creativity, encouraging collaboration, expecting and rewarding critical thinking, and teaching children not only how to communicate, but also the power of effective communication. These are skills students need to develop in order to thrive in today's and tomorrow's dynamic workplace.
Okay, given Robin's examples, let's put that into practice. What I'd like us to do is think about a lesson that you typically have with your learners. Now, if you're thinking about a specific lesson, I'm sure that there's probably a prequel, a sequel, fourth, fifth. It's like Fast and Furious, right? You can just go on for forever. The franchise of that lesson plan just goes on for forever. That is what we are going to focus on. Why? We are building units. We know that when learners are educated in not just singular lessons where we're thinking about, oh, we're going to do this one thing, okay, we're going to do this next thing, okay, we're going to do this next thing, okay, we're going to do this next thing, and it's disjointed. We know that studies show that teaching in units is much more effective than just teaching lessons that don't really correlate to each other, because units can then build on the skills, and then the information gets repeated in their brains and it builds deeper neural pathways. So think about a lesson plan that you typically have. I'm going to have you write it down. We're going to do this like workshop style. Write it down. And then think about the skills that that learner needs ahead of that lesson. Go ahead and write that down. And then think about the skills that the learner needs after that lesson. Like, what are you going to do next? I bet you can do it. And then to wrap up that lesson, the full thing, go ahead and write the very last part that your learner needs to have. So I'll give you an example that I love to do almost any time of year. I love a good party planning lesson. Now, let's break this down for you. When you use party planning as your lesson, not only is it fun and it incorporates all of the areas of the ECC, it actually is something that your learners are going to do when they are adults. And I learned this from Barbara Miles and from some other people when I was working with learners with deafblindness, that when you have your learners learn how to plan backwards, they do their own backward chaining of events, that skill lets them have the ability to have that practice in a fun and safe way. But what are you actually doing? Before you plan a party, it's the same skills as if you're going to plan getting ready for an interview, as the same skills as you're getting ready for your first job, as the same skills as you're getting ready for any big first thing that you're going to do, because you have to backward chain it. You have to backward plan. So what we're going to do in the very first lesson of this unit is we are going to plan our party. We're going to figure out who we want to be there. We're going to figure out where we want to have it. Do we want to have decorations? Do we want to have a theme? Do we want to have games? Do we want to have, food? What do we want to have there? And this could be you and one learner or you and a whole class. It doesn't really matter. And here you can incorporate literacy media because they're writing it down. You can incorporate technology. You can incorporate all of the goals that you have. And this learner is doing something fun, but it's not just a party planning lesson. You're actually including rigor in that lesson plan. So once you've figured that all out, then the second lesson is going to be to plan it and to maybe send out the invitations. So in this next lesson, maybe you take your invitations and you go around the school and you take the actual invitations that you made in the last one and you deliver those invitations. Or maybe this is where you write your grocery list, or you write down all the things that you're going to purchase. You're still planning and you're still doing. And this is where you're actually going to plan for the third lesson, is when you actually shop for the items. So in the second lesson, you might also talk about soliciting assistance. You might also bring in budgeting. I'm like grocery store queen over here because I find grocery stores fascinating, and it's an environment that your learner is going to have to navigate at some point, even with curbside and even with delivery. But if curbside or delivery are your jam, then you can teach them those skills too, because other things that they're going to need. Then on the third lesson, you actually go shopping for this. Because you've planned this in advance, you know when they're going to go shopping. So maybe you push into their community-based instruction, maybe if you have a way to get them off campus, or maybe you have it delivered. Maybe you go get it and bring it to the school. However it works for you, this is where you collect your items. You could do a scavenger hunt for the items, put one near each door in the classroom building. You could have different admins or different people around campus have different little bags or different things. You don't have to go off campus. Use your resources, use what you have and your ability and your availability for whatever kind of lesson and whatever kind of situation you have. This third one is where you actually go get the items. So in this lesson, they're practicing social skills because they're going to have to talk to some people. They're also practicing budgeting. They are practicing money. They are practicing gathering items. They're practicing organization skills. That's one of our comp skills. They're practicing a lot of different things. And just tweak it to whatever your learner needs. And then in the fourth lesson, they get to have a party. Now, how fun to actually have a party. One of the parties that I did with my learners was actually a pancake party because I'm an orientation and mobility specialist. And for my youngins, our goal for the whole year is not to get smashed like a pancake. I know it's morbid. I know it is. But really, that's what I'm teaching them. So we had a pancake party and it was really simple. Like you can easily just get mini microwavable pancakes, get a little whipped cream, a little chocolate syrup and some sprinkles or little mini M&Ms or something of that nature and do it that way. Or you could get pudding, right? They could make their own little pudding cups. You could not have them make any food. It doesn't really matter. The kids just want to have fun and get together with other kids. And this way, that allows them for some socialization. You can also make little joke cards for the kids to read. How cute would that be? Or question cards for them to read. Or you could have a game going on. Whatever works for you guys. This is just the time to have fun. Now, can you see that I hit just organically talking? I don't have a script here. I hit so many areas of the ECC, not even thinking about it. And you can too. And our learners can have so much more fun just by you taking your lessons and turning them into units. The other thing that this allows us to do is, instead of planning for each lesson, I sat down once and I planned my entire month of lessons. Now, if I could throw a party every month for each kid, I would. I can't, but I would. But it allows me to batch my tasks. Because what's happening behind the scenes is not just teaching, right? We have our teaching strategies, but we also have our admin and our workflow strategies. So what we want to do as impactful teachers is not just have our teaching strategies, which we do want those to be 21st century teaching strategies, but we also want to have our workflow to be efficient and effective. And the way that I do that is this way specifically. I delete, automate, and delegate everything that I possibly can. And what that looks like for me is I like to sit down once and I want to plan my entire week or my entire 2 weeks or even maybe a month in advance for all of my learners. Now, I've been doing this for 16, 17 years now, 17 years. I'm going to start to lose track at some point. If you are a first year teacher, I do want you writing down every aspect of every lesson. Sorry, I know it's not my favorite to tell you to do this, but I promise it'll pay off in the long run. If you've been doing this for a while, you may not need to do that anymore. But when we do something one time. Instead of task switching, we can sit down and put our whole mind to one thing at once. So that's something I want you to start taking into consideration is in your workflow time, how much of that are you task switching, which means going from one task to the other? You know how they like to say that multitasking is like the best thing? It is not. It's scientifically not the best thing to do. In fact, when you task switch, you lose 20% of your productivity every time you switch tasks. 20%. Because it takes time to figure out where you are and then what's happening and da-da-da. Have you ever been like in the zone and then somebody comes and talks to you and you like answer them and then you get back and like, what was I doing? What was I doing? That time. Sometimes it's minuscule, but sometimes it really does take a while to be like, oh, what was I doing? So instead of switching tasks, I'm going to have you start batching your tasks. And in order to do that, you have to delete as many things off your plate as you possibly can. Automate, meaning have the computer automate a lot of things. And delegate as much as you can. As teachers, we're a little bit the bottom rung, and for FERPA reasons, we can't really delegate a lot, but you can delegate so many things that you're probably not delegating, like maybe having a teacher help you make maps, maybe asking the OT to help you modify this cane, maybe asking the parent if they can help you come up with the decorations for your party. You can ask people for help. And allow yourself to step into that little bit of leadership. I think sometimes it's scary for some people to step into that part of leadership for themselves because we're not taught how to be leaders, but you definitely can. Another way that I automate is I like to use a Calendly link. It's the company Calendly. And I think in Google, they're starting to be able to do this just in your Google Calendar. I don't currently at this moment in time have that ability, but you can use a calendar software, right? Attach it to your Google Calendar, add your Google Calendar options. You can even just do it for just your planning periods. Like you could set up however you want and then send out the link to whoever you want to set up a meeting with, and they can choose a day and time that works for them instead of going back and forth with like, man, you guys know that TVI O&M phone tag, right? Where you call someone and you're like, hey, I just wanted to ask you a quick question about a student, but they're with the student, and by the time they get back to you, you're with the student, and then it's the end of the school day, and then you don't talk for, oh my gosh. That happens all the time. Or you send an email, hey, I just wanted to ask you about blah, 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 blah. And then you end up having like all these long discussions over email. And they're not reading most of it, and you're not reading most of it. And it's just hard to do it that way. But you can send them a quick link, say, hey, I'd love to have a meeting with you. I do that at the beginning of the year with the TVIs that I work with. Hey, can we get together and talk about our combined students this year? I just want to make sure that we're on the same page, we have a plan, and then there's a meeting on my calendar, and bam, easy peasy. Those are some things that I like to automate and then get rid of all of the rest. So that way, when I'm looking at my tasks, I can say, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to batch my lesson plans. Instead of just doing one lesson plan for one kid, one lesson plan for a next, one lesson plan for a next, I can sit down and do it all at once. And that's going to save me so much time in the long run. Okay, so the next question that I have for you, and I feel like I'm going super fast because this is a YouTube video and I don't think that you have that much time. The next question that I have for you is about the community that you are developing and providing. Because we know that when we have community, our mental health is a lot better. Like studies show that when you feel like you have a solid group of people around you, your mental health increases, your ability to be happy increases, you have more drive and more perseverance, and you get more done. one person who taught at the TVI Symposium last year who does a fantastic job of creating community, especially for our learners who come from other backgrounds, is Dr. Conchita Hernandez Regoreta. She does a phenomenal job of creating a safe space for the families that she works with. I'll let you hear a little bit from her.
Families, for the first thing, they're the expert in their children's lives, right? They understand what their children are good at. They understand what their children like to play with, what things they are motivated by. They understand their own culture, their own experiences. They're anthropologists in migration, right? Like they have a firsthand account of what that is and what that looks like. And because they're having to navigate a totally different system than one that they're used to, they're learning to become family support specialists. So within the community, there will be individuals who kind of take it upon themselves to support these families and be like, okay, go to this and go to that and figure out how to logistically fill out the paperwork and do all of these things. And then community organizers. Families are community organizing. They're figuring out ways to support each other to get stuff done and make things happen.
So with all of those, the different strategies and everything that you just gave, how can you go about taking all of these different points and things into consideration to make a family more engaged in the whole process for their kiddos? But at the same time, like, I think of like the expectations being too high or too low, right? Mm-hmm. Where if they're too low and you want to push their kiddo to, like, no, like they can do more. How do you approach something like that without being condescending, without it coming across? Obviously, that's not our intention, but without it coming across as like condescension, where you're not taking into consideration, how they do things at home, what their home life looks like, what their cultural expectations are for the young women in their family versus the young men in their families. And how do we do that without being condescending while trying to achieve a higher level of expectation for their kiddo?
That is such a great question. There's a lot wrapped up in that question. The first thing is absolutely ask them about what's going on at home, and ask them like, so what type of things do you all do as a family? So how does this particular child participate in that? And sometimes it's like, oh yeah, they do this and that. Sometimes it's like, well, no, they're blind, so they don't participate in that. So as you kind of do that intake of like trying to figure out the goals, it's when you figure out what's going on at home. What activities do you all do at home together? Is there shows you watch together? Is there community events you go together? Do you go to church together? Figuring out that information is going to be super, super helpful. But also gender roles. Gender roles are huge, especially for Spanish-speaking families. There's very, very marked gender roles. And so it's actually interesting because a lot of the times the girls will be more independent because they're expected to do a lot more than the boys are. The boys are expected to sit pretty and be maintained. And so part of that, and the way I have that conversation is trying to explain explicitly how American culture works. And I don't ever do it asset-based. So I don't say this is good or this is bad, either American culture or their culture they come from. Right? Just explaining, hey, in American culture, when your child goes to college, he's going to be expected to cook his own food, and he's going to be expected to do his own laundry. And so while he may not do that at home, we really want to prepare him as he's getting ready to go to college, what that looks like. And so explaining it in a way that's explicit to parents as like anthropology kind of, right? Like I know, in our countries, it doesn't work that way, but here, that's kind of something that's expected.
Now, she is specifically talking about working with multilingual families of learners who are blind and have low vision. And I think for all of us, if we can approach all of our learners from a culturally responsive manner, we can begin to build that community for our learners and for ourselves. Because I know for me, when I need something done, it's the TA and the parent. Those people are directly involved with the learner to a level that they are with the learner so much more than I am. And when I can build a solid foundation of respect, appreciation, doing things the way that the family does them, the learner is more able to generalize what they are doing with me over to the home setting. Meanwhile, if I were to be like, hey, let's make, like Dr. Conchita told me at one point, she was in a situation where they were having people make casseroles. And then she was like, they don't eat casseroles at home. Like, what's the point? So she switched the programming and had her people starting to make quesadillas because that's what they ate at home. And guess what? Their generalization of the skill improved because they don't eat casseroles at home. They eat quesadillas. So if we could begin to work that culturally responsive methodology into our teaching, then we can allow the generalization of the skills that we're working so hard to teach to be generalized, because we are only with our learners 1% of the time of their waking life. If you are teaching your learner Braille, that's 2% of their waking life. That's nothing. Everybody else, their family specifically, is with them more than we are. So when we can use culturally responsive techniques and 21st century teaching techniques, being culturally responsive, I would also say, is the 21st century teaching technique, as is, mastering your workflow. When you get all of those three things combined, you're on a rocket ship. And you are going to help your learners increase their skills so much faster. And you can do so without burning out. But I will say that there's also a component to you having community as well. So when we get together for the TVI Symposium, I love the fact that we are not only learning the 21st century teaching techniques, and we're not only doing so in a way that is easily fits into my workflow because it's all online and because you can watch the replays after the TVI Symposium is over, but we're also doing so in a way that allows us to be in community with other people who understand the issues that we're facing, and they might have a different perspective. When we're there live, it is incredible to see how many people are in the chat, right? And they're like, oh, I have this issue and I have this solution, and they're just chit-chatting away. And the presenter is able to then bring that chat information and also talk about it and incorporate that into their presentation. Now, the TVI Symposium is our annual conference for TVIs. It's a 2-day transformational experience that includes not only opportunities for you to discover the latest, most cutting edge techniques, but it's also online, and so you can watch it from anywhere. I don't recommend your car, but you could. You could watch it from your bed, from the couch, from your office, wherever you happen to be. And if you can't make it to that day and time, don't worry. We have replays up for 3 weeks afterwards. And it allows you to be in the room where people are talking about that high level stuff that will really impact your learners for the rest of the year. If you are watching this right now before September 21st, before September 19th and 20th, when the TVI Symposium is happening, I invite you to come join us. We have a great number of bonuses going along with your registration right now, because I want to make sure that we are adding so much value to your lives. You can click the link below to find out more information. Let me share with you some of the presentations that we have coming up. First off, we're going to start off with adult and child relationships for learners with multiple impairments by 2 amazing presenters from TSBVI Outreach. And then we're also going to go into disability services, presented by somebody who actually is in the disability services office at a college, which is so cool. And we're also talking to parents. They're going to have a parent's spot at the table. This is a panel of parents who have children, adults now, some of them, with visual impairments, and then also gamifying your VI lessons, like how to bring technology and games into your VI lessons. Then we're talking about how to use AI for your lesson planning, and even becoming a better itinerant TVI using technology. Now, this one's going to be incredible, all about how to use Google Docs, how to organize the files, how to make your life easier. Then we are ending the day with instructional routines for students with multiple impairments and a networking party. On the next day, we have some more incredible presentations for you, getting started with sensory balance approach. We're also talking about ideas and lessons and strategies for working with students who have CVI, cortical or cerebral visual impairment. Then Laura Jones is going to come share with us how she teaches Braille to little ones, which is so fun. We have another presentation all about meaningful and measurable IEP goals and thinking outside of the Braille cell. Mangold has been updated. How are we going to use this? What activities can we use this with so it's not so boring, especially for our littles? And then the very last presentation is all about collaboration with the rest of the team from Kara Height, and she used to be an APE teacher, so she knows all of the things. She's lived it. Now, if you are interested in joining us, I would absolutely love to have you. All you have to do is click the link below and we will get you started. If for some reason you do so and you register and you're like, oh, can't actually make it, just ask us for a refund a week before the presentations start and we will hook you up. And of course, I would not let you go without incredible bonuses. Now, we have an Impactful TVI bonus bundle where we are giving you 5 free bonus presentations as well as 20 CEUs. It's $582 value. It's absolutely incredible. And then your supported TVI bonus bundle that is going to include your private online forum where you guys can chat and talk about everything that you want to share about, and networking parties for you. We've got that for you, $114 value, absolutely free, and the Easy PD bundle. So with this, we have a digital notebook and we make sure everything is absolutely accessible for you for 3 weeks afterwards so you can watch it 24/7. Again, this is the TVI Symposium. It's one of the most incredible events that you can go to. If you have any questions, just drop your question in the comments below and I will be happy to answer it for you. And I hope to see you at the TVI Symposium this year. And I hope that the information that you got from this video today really can help you to take a step forward, whether or not you decide to come to the TVI Symposium. We really need to be working towards using those 21st century teaching techniques, as well as mastering your workflow and increasing your community and teaching in a culturally responsive manner. All of those are super duper important in order to increase your ability to help your learners become more confident travelers and more confident and being more independent and reaching their ECC goals without you burning out, because we need you here in the field, let me tell you. But if you do want to dive deeper, then I do invite you to join the TVI Symposium, and I will see you there.